Things will never be the same again. This pandemic is being used to cover up something far more sinister. They are bringing in the new monetary order. The reset will involve a digital world currency. That's the plan, digital currency, because cash is getting too dangerous. In reality, they will be robbing you of all your freedoms and privacy. Last month, Bill Gates went viral in several controversial interviews advocating mandatory digital ID as proof of coronavirus vaccination as soon as a vaccine is available. Gates has also funded research to create digital personal ID vaccination tattoos to make proof of vaccination visually and electronically apparent. He has also long advocated a cashless society using digital ID. The cattle must be branded to ensure the wealth of the elites isn't contaminated by personal liberty. This digital immunity certificate sounds awfully similar to the New World Order scheme to chip the population. In China, they've been working on their central bank digital currency, and we're starting to see the first rollout now of the gold-backed digital yuan. This is a global reset in the financial system. Unlike the dollar, the digital yuan will be effectively backed up by the massive amount of made-in-China goods and services, and not by a transoceanic empire of 800 bases. And the value of the digital yuan will be decided by the market, as it happens with Bitcoin. The digital yuan, using blockchain technology, will automatically float, thus bypassing the US-controlled global financialized casino. China is on it, but the US, UK, Russia, and India are also on their way to launch their own cryptocurrencies. The US dollar is backed by millions of taxpayers and debt slaves worldwide who need it to keep people with guns from harassing them. Bitcoin is backed by scarcity and mining cost, a cost which is usually increasing. Mining cost is energy, so it is backed by energy expenditure. I suspect digital wallet currency controlled by the very people that control it now. At that point, if your social media score is too low, they turn off your money, and you get to starve. Shutdowns gave the Fed banking system time to flood and destroy the US dollar, and thus destroying our debt to China with infinity worthless US dollars. Degrade a currency sufficiently, via hyperinflation and collapse of the banking system, and people will eventually look for alternatives. But that's generally the sort of thing that has to happen. Almost always, these currency substitutions occur only once the existing currency has become deeply compromised. Even then, the thing people naturally reach for is an existing, trusted currency, often the US dollar, rather than some entirely new unit of account. When currency substitution has occurred naturally, it's almost always done so only after the incumbent currency has been debauched by hyperinflation. They want two things: privatize currency and suppress cash, for more control. That is what they crave, control. Money in and by itself is not what interests them. They have enough of it and only see it as a tool to control the masses. The same goes for governments, which is why all systems are set up to entrap people using debt. Freedom, both personal and economic, is the enemy of this agenda, so any politician who talks about freedom for people is lying. Most of them stay clear of that and instead use relative terms like equality, fairness, etc. Knowing full well how people can be equally enslaved. Governments exist on the fact they can use inflation to borrow and spend more than they actually have. Politicians will never give up the ability to kick the can down the road. It's just not politically expedient to be tied to reality. The reason that the economy is so sick is not the coronavirus. It is because of everything the government did before the coronavirus. The economy was sick long before the virus infected it, and the air was already coming out of the bubble because the Fed tried to do something that was impossible. Which was normalized interest rates with an abnormal amount of debt. They got everybody hooked on the drug of cheap money. And then tried to withdraw the drug from the market. And then obviously we went into withdrawal at the end of 2018. That's when the Fed came back and said, okay, we're going back to QE, we're going back to rate cuts. But then we got the coronavirus, which acted as the pin that pricked this massive bubble. The reason that the economy is so vulnerable is because we're broke and leveraged to the hilt. Corporations are levered to the max. They've been borrowing all this cheap money from the Fed, they've been using it to buy up their overpriced stocks. So they didn't have any savings. Now the government is having to bail out the states and corporations with money we do not have. It's the people that support the government, not the other way around. But we're pretending that the government can support the people and the businesses by using a printing press. That all we have to do is print money. We're about to find out the hard way that the most expensive way to pay for government is through inflation. There's no sign that the extraordinary monetary policy that is undermining the dollar will end ever. In fact, the markets are starting to bet on negative interest rates by the end of the year. Negative rates will rob the middle class blind only to transfer wealth to the rich and the Wall Street banks. The banking system does not create wealth. It steals wealth through deception. President Donald Trump on Tuesday again pushed the Federal Reserve to adopt negative interest rates, even as several members of the U.S. Central Bank have said they do not see a need for rates, now near zero, to move into negative territory. If we're just going to shelter in place, and we're going to dole out money, and we're just going to run up trillions and trillions and trillions in annual budget deficits, how much longer is the dollar going to hold up? How much longer can the dollar stay afloat when we're basically sinking it? We're basically daring the world to dump the dollar. What is the Fed's endgame here? They must know that the source of their power is the value still left in the dollar. I don't believe they're unaware of the fact that they're rapidly running out of road here. I'd love a game theory kind of breakdown of the Fed's options. Personally, I think the thing that makes the most sense, from their perspective, would be to get Congress to eliminate cash and, once everyone is forced into digital dollars, institute negative rates. They could do this under the cover of a national UBI rollout to get the public to swallow this change without too much resistance. The end game is hyperinflate, the transition to e-currency. The Fed has enough dry powder to backstop everything and blow one more crazy big bubble. When we all get universal basic incomes, that's the beginning of the end. When the bubble pops, it's going to be the worst recession since the Great Depression. We're going to have trillion-dollar deficits. We're going to have 20% unemployment. This is going to end in complete catastrophe for the dollar. We can't kick this can down the road anymore. This thing is going to implode, and it's going to implode soon. The party is going to end. The dollar is going to crash. And we're going to see the cost of living go through the roof. Now, we're at the end game. We're at the real crash. This time we're going to get a dollar collapse. We're going to get a sovereign debt crisis. The party is going to end. All the amount of inflation, which is the money printing that the Fed is creating now, which is unprecedented in scale, is off the charts. The deficits are exploding in a way never seen before. All this is going to end in complete catastrophe for the dollar. Everybody can get a check from the government, but what happens when that check doesn't buy anything? That's the crisis that's coming. The stimulus doesn't work. It is actually a sedative. The markets would correct themselves if left alone with no bailouts. The cost of government is what it spends. Government spending is actually taxation. Every dollar the government spends is a dollar that we have to fund. The government causes the recessions with the policies that it uses to get us out of the last recession. And instead of allowing the free market to cure the economy, government intervention makes it sicker. The government is too big, debt has been too high for decades, and money is basically worthless. I personally don't think any government has the courage to do what needs to be done so we can truly have a strong and stable economy. The US government, in cooperation with the Federal Reserve, is running the largest Ponzi scam in the history of civilization. The government has been spinning blue versus red while heisting the American economy. The 1% richest crippled the economy by this global pandemic agenda to lock down everyone, heist millions, and invest it all into the stocks and electronic money. The present and future is a direct consequence of bad government decisions. We are in danger of total social disintegration and societal collapse from the scum that rises to the top of this cesspool of a swamp. This pandemic is being used to defer blame from a financial crisis which enables the wealthy to stay wealthy and in power while they hyperinflate to minimize the debts of the people. The working class is working for free because of the elected lying thieves. Remember, when the debtor owes the creditor so much, it's the creditor's problem as they only care about losing the nut. Politicians are actually the pandemic we have to get rid of. George Orwell once said, "A people that elect corrupt politicians, imposters, thieves, and traitors are not victims, but accomplices." Businesses aren't going to come back. Jobs are not coming back. We're in the greatest depression. They closed down our economy, with no exit strategy. Shutting down our economy because of a virus was like us committing suicide to save ourselves from the burglar who just broke into the house. The goal is to crash economies and currencies so the banksters could bring about a monetary reset with a new system designed to replace the debt-based fiat monetary system the world has been on since 1971 with a new cashless digital-only system. Very few are willing to go through the market pains that will be required to fix this failing ship. No one wants to be held responsible for the poor decisions they financially made. Why would they agree to be accountable when they see the government being so irresponsible? The country is in complete financial dismay. The US has been setting the example for its citizens by living beyond its means, by using its global credit card to make purchases it can't afford thinking it will pay as it goes. However, there will come a time when the US will hit its maximum credit limit and will have to pay the consequences of living beyond its means. This is decades in the making and it will not be resolved over 1 or 2 4-year terms. There needs to be a 15 to 20-year plan to set the economic cycle correct with the proper parameters. The government is enabling laziness by cuddling the needy rather than teaching the needy to be self-reliant. People will transform themselves into the environment they are living in. It is survival. If there are no handouts, people will need to find a way to survive, otherwise they cease to exist. In a way, it is Darwinism. Of course there will always be those looking for the easy way by cheating or stealing, but that will also need to be addressed. Today's politicians are too short-minded and public-pleasing. And the public is too dependent and lazy to want to make any real sacrifices to encourage any change. They feel they are entitled to be provided for by the government. Hopefully, after the aftermath of financial destruction, we will form a new political party that can produce a legacy of leadership of single purpose for the livelihood of the country. Enabling people to work hard and progress their lives rather than wait for the third Friday of each month for their government check to come that barely gets them by, but still free, is better than working for it, in their minds. The banksters as lenders, buyers of last resort, eventually owners of it all, as is their destiny since Creature was born on Jekyll Island 1913. Debt creation increases their power, they are loving every minute of the present pandemic. We know there will be a massive devaluation of currencies against gold, and that is going to mean higher prices for everything and food shortages. The question is, at what point does this tip over into civil unrest and disorder? How different will life be after the reset? The reset usually means that working people end up poorer. It looks like the last 40 years of unprecedented personal debt is coming to an end, which is rather like an alcoholic suddenly ending his relationship with drink. Does this mean for the average person the priority will be food, electricity, gas, and internet, and Eckhart Tolle videos, and everything else is a luxury? In case you are still confused about the virus, this is the globalists' attempt to world domination. What you see now is the Federal Reserve buying, stealing equities with toilet paper dollar. It is nationalizing the world economy under the world government. The only vaccine I see is reinstating the Coinage Act of 1792, which provided the death penalty for counterfeiting. God bless the Founding Fathers.